Hey, happy Friday, everybody. It's me, Zach the Grow Guy, again. I had a little snafu trying to upload the video with the batch tanks versus reservoirs and didn't save, so I'm gonna have to do it again. But that's okay. Uh, Basically, today, guys, I'm going to be talking about, basically drain to waste applications for batch tanks versus reservoirs. And, the main distinction between the two is going to be the nutrient solution strength. In a batch tank, you're going to mix up several feedings worth of solution. It may even be more than 2 weeks worth, depending. Whereas reservoirs typically are going to be about 7 days worth of nutrition and water volume for said garden. There are pros and cons to each, and so I'm going to kind of go over each of those. And if you guys have any questions during the process, just let me know. But I'm just going to go ahead and dive right into it. First and foremost, batch tanks are going to require less mixing because of the fact that you are able to make very strong solutions and then have an injector set to a ratio that will basically dilute your stock solution to what you would put into a reservoir. So instead of maybe having a 100-gallon reservoir, you have a batch tank that can make hundreds of thousands of gallons of reservoir, if that makes sense. Batch tanks are scalable. So, once you have a formulation dialed in, it's very easy to just, do some multipliers and figure out how much more nutrition input you're going to need, how much more water, how many more drippers, how many more plants you can run. So, batch tanks make it very easy for a grower to be able to, scale up as necessary. The other thing about batch tanks is that it allows the grower to have precise injection. And why that's important is when you are able to, modify your ratios a little bit and get your ratios to where your strains are doing very, very well, you can, turn injectors on, turn injectors off, and mess with your formula to a point where, you can kind of get your own secret sauce, so to speak, running there. And so, the injection definitely allows for large scale, tailoring, I guess we could say, of nutrient formulations. And it also allows you to deliver a superior level of something like Sanidate 5 or Xeritol to be able to, sanitize the system properly. Because you're pulling straight out of a stock tank at that point, there's not going to be any degradation from those sanitizers sitting in a solution. So that's the best bang for your buck in terms of, being able to keep the lines clean. Some of the cons, though, of doing batch tanks is there is more potential for microbial growth because of the fact that those batch tanks sit around for a much longer period of time. They're not being changed as often, so there is some stagnicity there. Typically what I have growers do is look into like a citric acid based input for those stock tanks. Citric acid is a food grade preservative that's also a mold inhibitor, so it works very, very well in that situation to be able to keep tanks kind of gunk free, and it will allow you to possibly use less phosphoric acid on your pH down later in the line. So it's definitely kind of a win-win situation and a very good product that I recommend most growers look into. One of the other cons is that you have a little bit less diversity in what you're able to run through an injection system because of the fact that there are some nutrients that are incompatible. So, the limitation is kind of monetary at that point. Like you can always put more injectors into a system, but, it's sky's the limit at that point in terms of how many injectors do you really need to be able to utilize all these different products. So, it's up to the grower to figure out exactly what they want to be able to put on these plants. But, batch tanks definitely do kind of limit the diversity of nutritional input that you can put in. That being said, again, unless you have additional injectors for those inputs. But, both applications, like I said, can definitely benefit from Xeritol and Sanidate to keep the lines clean. For a reservoir situation, I would definitely recommend utilizing like the Xeritol 2.0 or the Xeritol HC and batching it out as needed. For injection systems that are less than 6,000 gallons a day, xylitol is a good option for you. If you're utilizing more than 6,000 gallons a day, we might want to look at the Sanidate 5. Basically, what we're kind of shooting for is the 5 to 7 parts per million of peroxyacetic acid in the water column. And the way that we like to test that is Lamott PAA low-range test strips. They're just the little litmus paper strip, and you stick it in there, and if 5 lights up, you're good, but if the 10 lights up, you've got a little bit too much. So we just try to shoot for that 5 to, basically turn green, then we know we're good. But reservoirs, they do have some pros and cons on their own as well. They definitely allow for a little bit more diversity in terms of the, crop types that you're going to be growing, because of the fact that you're not relying on just 5 or 6 inputs to be able to grow something. You can definitely tailor your nutrient profile to your strains a little bit more. They definitely still allow you to utilize, drippers, which is huge. Anytime you can implement a drip system, it's going to make your life that much easier. I know there's a lot of folks in the industry that say that hand watering is for cavemen, so to speak, but in my honest opinion, learn how to hand water properly, and then you can set up a good drip system. If you're able to, see what plants need nutritionally and kind of learn how to read the book, so to speak, in terms of when they have deficiencies, when they're, needing to be pruned, those are things you learn, I think, during that initial hand watering phase. And so, everybody's got to start somewhere, and, being able to hand water properly is going to allow you to have a, good game plan once you set up your drippers, because you're going to understand, water retention capacity, when to utilize certain NPK values. And so, definitely making sure that you've got that nutritional profile down allows you to, excel to that next level. And even with a reservoir, you can still get there by implementing drippers, like those pressure compensating ones from like Woodpecker. The NetFM ones work really, really well. The other pro to reservoir is your input diversity. You're literally limited to whatever you want to mix into that tank. You don't necessarily have to rely on injector heads to do it for you. So you're able to kind of utilize your own secret sauce, and the sky is the limit in terms of what you want to put in there. But remember, guys, there is the perception of value, and more products doesn't always end up, giving you a better end product in the end. So, the fact that you can use more inputs it's good and it's not. It depends on the grower and the line that they're running, but in my personal opinion, sometimes less is more. The cons to utilizing reservoirs, guys, it's more manpower, because obviously if you're mixing up that much more water, it's going to take you that much more time, which detracts from other things that you could be doing in the garden. It's definitely less precise. There is a lot of inputs that sometimes go into reservoirs, and if we think about, using a shot glass to measure something, how often is 5 mils really 5 mils? A lot of times it's 4, or a lot of times it's 6. And so being able to replicate your results every single time makes it a little bit more difficult when you're hand batching out reservoirs like that, but it's still definitely doable. The biggest con, in my opinion, though, guys, to hand mixing reservoirs is that there is a finite amount of water. When that reservoir goes dry, you have nothing left for those plants until you manually go in there and fill it back up, unless you've got a float. But even then, that's not necessarily the best way to go about it. I think that most of the reservoirs that I've seen, the floats don't work very well. And if you're just feeding RO water to your plants, I guess it's not the end of the world, but it's not good either. But having a batch tank, even if that batch tank runs dry, you're still going to be able to have some type of water source getting to those plants. And so, that's kind of a stopgap / insurance policy that you're able to utilize in that situation. I appreciate everybody tuning in. I apologize, I had to do this twice again. I got a message right as I was trying to save it, and it didn't go through. But I'll open it up again. If anybody has any questions about batch tanks or reservoirs, now would be the time to ask. Awesome. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you again next Friday. If you have any questions, feel free to hit BioSafe or my DM, and we'll get them addressed. Talk to you later, everybody. Bye for now.